Hello there, good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Lincoln City Matchday Live. What a brilliant week it's been for the Imps as well. Few more wins, 6 goals scored, win this afternoon, and the Imps could go to the top of the League One table as well. It's a jam-packed show for you this afternoon. We've got interviews with the likes of George Grant, ex-Sunderland player Chris Brown joins us on the show as well. We'll be hearing from a Sunderland podcaster as well. And for the first time this season, we'll be speaking live to manager Michael Appleton. Just after 2 o'clock, he'll be giving us his immediate reaction to the team that he's picked to face today's opponents, Sunderland, the Black Cats. Right then, let's bring in Gary Hutchinson. And Gary, of course, we're asking for everyone's comments, questions. We'd like to put them to you as well. But one that I've had this morning, actually, from City fan Stu Wells. He tweeted me and you saying not to mention the P word. Not sure whether he meant Christmas presents or promotion, but it throws up a nice talking point. We'll go with promotion, and I'll ask the question to you, Gary. With the Imps second in the table, a third of the way through the season now, is it too early to start talking about promotion?
Well, good afternoon, Sam. I'm absolutely going to sit on the fence and say it is and it isn't. Because as football fans, we live in hope. Every game, you bring hope of a win. If you're bottom, you're hoping that you get off the bottom. So whenever you start a season, you're hoping for promotion. And the more the season goes on and the longer time you spend at the top end of the table, promotion is a reality. But I think the other thing is that when you get to where we are, and we're obviously one of the smaller clubs in the promotion race, it also heaps pressure on, and that's another key P, isn't it? And I think that while fans are believing that we can get promoted, it's fantastic and a reflection of where the club is. But then if we do fall away a little bit, people then may see that as failure. It's like when you draw a game 1-1. If you are winning 1-0 and concede in the last minute, it feels like a loss. If you're losing 1-0, conceding in the last minute, it feels like a win.
Yeah, do get in touch with us this afternoon, as well as your questions and comments and your score and scorer predictions. I want to know from you, do you think it's too early to start talking about promotion? Are you one of those people that doesn't like to mention it until it's just about to happen? Is it a bit of a jinx to be talking about it now? But then the flip side, of course, is that we're football fans. We're allowed to get carried away in the start that Lincoln City and Michael Appleton have made. Why not? Gary, what a week it's been. The momentum is well and truly building, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's been an absolutely phenomenal week, I think. You can't ask for more than 2 wins, 6 goals. I mean, in terms of chances and shots at goal, it runs into double figures for both games, I think, as well. So, look, we've been threatening to hammer teams. Let's be honest about it. Even when we've been away and like 1-0 at Swindon, you can just feel we're just moments from clicking, one pass away from creating opportunities. And all of a sudden, in the space of just 3 or 4 days, we just started creating opportunities aplenty. And, fans love to see attacking football. They love to see shots at goal, and they love to see Lincoln City wins.
Yeah, and one of those wins came against Rochdale this time last week. The Imps travelling, of course, to Scotland. Gary, let's have a look back at the highlights, and we can thank our friends at the EFL for this package because it's all Lincoln City chances.
Yes, it is. And I mean, I think that was completely reflective of the game. I thought that we controlled it more or less from start to finish. They may have had a 15 sort of minute spell. But what a goal this is. Teo Eden, I thought, had a really good game. There's the crucial moment for me, that step over from McGrandles. When a team's short on goals, he could have been tempted just to hammer that. But there was the little shout. It was intentional. And that's a really, really good goal. And we were playing such nice football against a team that play nice football as well. It was a good game to watch, but we just found that ruthless edge when it counted, didn't we?
Yeah, and it tells a lot when the opposition manager, in this case Barry Murphy, speaking after the game, said, look, the reason we lost is because we lost solely to the better team. And that always gives you a good indication of just how good a side yours has been. And that's not the first time that an opposition manager has really praised the Imps this season.
No, quite right. And it's the same with opposition fans as well. Lots of people saying they're the best team that we've played this season. And it's easy to see why. Look, when we were drawing with Accrington and chances were hard to come by, it would be hard to then say Lincoln are the best team we've played because we haven't shown it. In this game, we've shown it. But boy, what a strike that is. And that comes out of nowhere. And that comes at a crucial point in the game as well, because if you go away from home, 10 minutes to go, 1-0 up, it's poised delicately. I think Lewis Monsma's goal just gave us the edge to press on. And when this team's playing with expression and playing with confidence, there's no wonder that other managers do look kind of adoringly at our players and our setup.
Yeah, it just never really seemed. I mean, we've seen a lot of chances here, of course, but the other side is we never really looked like conceding, did we?
No, never. I think they had one shot on target. And massive kudos to the fullbacks there. I mean, the last chance there was Max Melbourne's. In the first half, 2 or 3 of the chances that we saw were started with Teo Eden. In the second half, 2 or 3 of the chances that we saw started with TJ Ioma. So, football's a team game, and we are really demonstrating that, I think, this season. All of the goals, all of the chances have got 3, 4, 5 passes in before they go in. Even Lewis Monsma's strike was a well-worked opportunity. So, again, it's I think it's really good from a team perspective.
Yeah, just on Lewis Monsma, Gary. I mean, what can we say about him at this stage that we haven't already? I mean, I was listening to your Stacey West podcast, and you rightly said that actually one of the good things about Monsma, added to the fact that he's scoring a load of goals and playing really well at centre-back, is the fact that he actually takes a little bit of pressure off the rest of the side. Just elaborate on that, if you could.
Yeah, 100%. Because there's lots of talk about Lewis Monsma from opposition managers, from players, even arguably from fans as well. When Monsma's playing, it's get your money on him to score first, and he does take the pressure off 1 or 2 of the other players. Or it takes the focus off them. And I think in wider football, we've seen that used to great success by managers in the past. And I think about Alex Ferguson and Jose Mourinho. You always used to make things about them. Now, Monsma doesn't do that, but in everybody focusing on Monsma, it just removes some of the focus away, perhaps from the likes of James Jones, Conor McGrandles, who are then free to get on with their game without that kind of added pressure of people saying James Jones is the key man. And the thing is, Monsma's delivering as well, so there's no sort of post-game reflection or anything like that, and I think it's good.
Plenty of comments coming in already. It's certainly a divided one in terms of the fan base as to whether we can start talking about promotion or not. James Christopher says, let's see where we are come the end of Feb. We're way ahead of where I thought we'd be at this point. I'm loving it. Today is a day that I really missed. The bank would have been rocking today with a full away end and 617 in full voice. It certainly would. Kev Barwise, great to hear from Kev, says, afternoon, gents. I'm on the fence too. I can remember clearly how we felt back in 82 when we were on similar points at this stage. So don't want to tempt fate. I mean, that is it, isn't it? Fans don't want to tempt fate at the moment. Let's just enjoy the matches game by game, especially the brand of football that the Imps are playing. Do keep your comments coming in regarding that. Gary, let's just talk about TJ Ioma, because particularly in the second half, he had a big influence on that Rochdale game, didn't he?
Yes, he did. I was actually quite surprised when he missed a few games leading into that. He'd been a regular in the starting 11, and then he had just had a little rest, I think. But he had a big impact, particularly in the Rochdale game. But then he demonstrated again on Tuesday night his flexibility. And again, he's another one of those players that the pressure has been taken off a little bit. He doesn't always get the plaudits. 9 times out of 10 when we're winning a game, there is somebody else that you can point to and say they were man of the match. They had a great game. And it takes away from the fact that TJ actually is a 7 or an 8 almost every game he plays. And let's not forget, we talk about Sean Rowan's kind of explosion onto the scene. TJ Ioma made his senior Football League debut at the same time. And that, for me, when you watch him play now, he plays with all the quality and assurance of a player that's got 3, 4, 5 seasons behind them. He's going to be a really good player in his career, a really good player.
Yeah, and of course, as ever, we'll be finding out if TJ Ioma is in today's starting lineup live at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Time for a quick break. We're back very shortly. Bit of a thumping track there, wasn't it? Something to get you in the mood ahead of this afternoon's 3 o'clock kickoff. Gary, we've gone through one win from last week. Let's now have a look back at the other one. Of course, the EFL Trophy, the Papa John's Trophy, as it's known now. What a performance from the Imps here! Did you quite expect it to be so emphatic?
No, not at all. I actually thought that it might be a tight game. I thought 1 or 2 of the players that were coming in that had something to prove hadn't shown anything running up to it. I think both Remy Howarth and Zach Elbazedi have struggled, to impose themselves when they've been given a chance. When I heard that Shrewsbury had made 10 changes, I must admit I had a little bit more hope, but I never expected the sort of comprehensive win that we did get. No.
It's the pace, isn't it? I mean, you look at the highlights here, and it's not just Zach Elbazedi that's flying forward there. There are about 4 players running at about 100 miles an hour. It's exciting.
Yeah, it is 100%. And everyone was talking about Zach, and rightly so, because he was the man of the match. But there wasn't a bad player on the park. And when you consider that this is the Papa John's Trophy, a trophy that arguably you tend to maybe experiment with a little bit. You tend to play players either out of position or ones that haven't been getting minutes. And they played with all the kind of the verve and attractiveness of the very best first team players that we've got. And yes, of course, Zach gets the headlines. And I'm delighted for him, because in pre-season, I thought he looked good. He looked strong. He'd bulked up. And then he's obviously been a bit unfortunate with injuries. So from a squad perspective, this was really, really promising. And people who write this competition off, here's the reason why it's important.
What a break this is, by the way. I mean, the turn from Brennan Johnson is quite something. And then, Zach Elbouzedi there, okay, he gets a slight deflection in his pass, but he was there to play that, and a fine finish.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that little pirouette from Johnson was exquisite. He's a class above. It was a great break from Zach. And, credit to Remy as well. He's in that kind of attacking midfield role. He's meant to be getting in the area. He did that smart turn and finish. The penalty rounded it off. I mean, it's almost like a Brennan Johnson assist, isn't it, these days? But it was just, I just thought we were excellent from start to finish. Thought they had one player that really troubled us, and our defence stood firm. So on to the next round.
Yeah. How do you think Michael has got it to the stage where he's got players that aren't playing every week, but are coming in and are just playing so well? Because the difficulty for a manager is when you have some high quality players, but you're not able to start them every week, actually, they become unhappy at a club. But it seems very much the opposite here at the moment.
Yep. Two reasons. Good recruitment, good coaching. He's recruited the right characters. He's recruited players who are willing to fight for a place. He's recruited players that don't let their heads drop when they're not in the team. And I think, Zach and Remy are perfect examples of that their chances have been so limited. But they've come in and they've done a fantastic job, and they've always looked focused, and they've always looked dedicated to the cause. And it's good coaching as well. They obviously do a lot of work on patterns. They do a lot of work on the method of play. And you see, I mean, we've picked up on it before. If it's TJ Ioma playing in the Lewis Monsma kind of central defence role, he will still ping the 30-foot, 40-yard crossfield passes as Lewis does. Each of the roles in the team is defined not by the player, but by the actual role itself. And then the players learn to perform that role. And I think we've seen that classic example, Robbie Gotts. Probably not brilliant the first game he played at right back by his own admission, but once he got on point, he suddenly forced himself into the first team reckoning at right back, which is, credit to him.
Yeah, certainly so. We've mentioned Zach Elbouzedi a little bit already, but let's take a look back at some of his highlights here, Gary, because he's been nominated for the EFL Trophy Player of the Round. I think all the details are available on the club's website now as to how you can vote for that. Do you expect to see more of him now after this performance and the fact that he seems to be, judging by the way that he's running, certainly fully fit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been tough for him because obviously playing on the left there, Theo Archibald plays there as well. So he's kind of had to bide his time. And unfortunately, Theo's injury is unfortunate for him, but it's good for Zach because he gets in the side. He's obviously a talent. I mean, I think his final ball was quality at times on Tuesday night. He's obviously got pace, but I wouldn't want to pigeonhole him just as a player with pace. I think that's dangerous. You can have all the pace in the world and do nothing with it. Kevin Gall springs to mind from a few years ago. Well, he's got his pace and poise, and when he runs with the ball, he makes it look like a computer game, like it's stuck to his feet. We certainly did on Tuesday night. What we need to see now is if he gets 15, 20 minutes at the end of a game to replicate that form. He doesn't need to score. He doesn't need to assist, but he just needs to show in 15 minutes at the end of a game that he's got that same level of pace, the same attack and the same creativity. And he'll force his way into the first team reckoning if he does.
What about Brennan Johnson then, Gary? Because we are approaching January. I don't want to tempt fate. You don't want to tempt fate. But, if we look back at last season, we know what happened to Tyler Walker. Forest are in a similar position this time around than they were last season. Obviously, Tyler went back at a time where he was playing really well for Lincoln. Brennan's playing really well. And we're getting to that stage on Twitter, certainly, where Nottingham Forest fans are starting to watch Lincoln City highlights because they know that Brennan Johnson is going to be involved. And certainly on that front, Tuesday night won't have helped things.
No, it won't. But there are some really subtle differences that fans should take into consideration. Tyler Walker was our main focal point. Without his goals, I think we would have probably been in more of a relegation battle. And when we lost him very late in the window. The situation with Brennan Johnson is different. He's a phenomenal footballer and he has created for us. But I don't want this to sound disrespectful. He is replaceable within the team unit in that, our success isn't all down to Brennan Johnson. He is a part of it, but he is a part of a cog in a machine. So you could take the one cog out and it wouldn't fall apart. Last year, I think losing Walker was dangerous. Secondly, I think that Michael is much more on it with loans that he has arranged. I think he's more likely to understand what Forest are going to do. I think he's more likely to have replacements lined up because he will have had that time to plan for January. Last year at this time, he was planning for the future, the wider future. But we've seen now the fruitions of those plans. So now he will be focused on January. I don't want Brennan to go back, but if he does, it won't be the end of the world.
That's a really interesting point you raised there about the fact that there are potentials for Lincoln City to bring more personnel in. I guess it's easy to look at the way that the first team squad are playing at the moment and think, well, let's hope that we don't lose any players. But judging by Michael's recruitments that he's made, certainly in the summer, I mean, we could see some more exciting players come in potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to be pragmatic and realise that football is a fluid game and players come and players go. And whilst that does sting fans, and it certainly stings me when I see any rumours or when I see reports, unfortunately it does happen. But that's exactly what does happen. When players go, others come in. And at this moment in time, I don't think there's been a single player who's come in the summer who you can say, he's flopped. In fact, you'd be hard pushed to say that any permanent signing since Michael come in, who is still at the club now, is classed as a flop. So I have every belief that if we were to lose players, Michael would react quickly. Look at Callum Morton and Jamie Sewell. Okay, I know Jamie Sewell got injured, but Callum Morton came in, was injured. What happened? Michael reacted, bang. Jamie Sewell came in and scored on his debut. So make no mistake, with Michael's contacts, there will already be a contingency in place. And I don't think that fans should be going into December worried unduly. Let's just rub our hands together and think we've got Brennan Johnson until January. What happens, happens. You know, you can spend all the time worrying about something that you can't affect. That's pointless. Enjoy the ride.
Vicky Shipley says, good afternoon, Gary and Sam. Gutted that we're not at the LNER today for what should be a great game, watching at home in Leicestershire. We're asking fans whether it's too early to start talking about promotion yet. And Steve O'Dare, I should say, as ever, has got in touch. He says, it is far too early to talk about promotion yet. There are something like 30 games left to play this season. I sincerely hope that we do get to go into the Championship, but it's unfair on the manager and players if people decide now that we should gain promotion and that they failed to achieve it. Steve, pragmatic as ever. Great to have your comments this afternoon, Steve. And Matt Stevenson says, got the match on the big screen in Durham. All lads on Skype on the PC who are Sunderland fans. Wish we were all down in Lincoln today. Up the Imps. Nice to hear from you, Matt. Right. George Grant was given a bit of a rest on Tuesday night. Well, he only played the second 45 minutes. He's had a brilliant season so far, hasn't he? This is the appraisal that he gave on his season so far to BBC Radio Lincolnshire's Rob Makepeace.
Obviously, I set myself targets at the start of each season. Obviously, didn't hit it last year, so happy to hit it this year.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a few of them have been penalties, but a lot more goals than last season. What do you think that's down to?
I don't know, really. Obviously, the team's doing a lot better. Obviously, we're creating more chances for each other. Brennan's winning me a lot of penalties as well. So, obviously, to have that responsibility is obviously always going to add goals to your game as well. So, happy to have that.
Yeah, having Brennan, we saw him in the central midfielder position you usually play, obviously, on Tuesday night. What's it like to play with someone like him, especially with the third goal where he created it himself?
Well, yeah, definitely. He's improving each game, I think, as well, especially that defensive side, which you saw a bit of both in that clip and that goal where he's won the ball back and then showing a bit of skill to get out of a tight situation and creating an opportunity for the team. So he's getting better and better with each game. And I did say to him that he would do that. So I'm glad that he's getting the game time that he deserves.
And I guess you can say to him, look, if you go out on loan and play at League One level, this is a way to really kickstart your career, a bit like you did, when you went on loan to League Two and to League One.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's good for all young players to get out as early as they can and experience like men's football. Obviously, he's had that, obviously being with Forest from a young age, but not a consistent amount of games. So I really think he's improving. Yeah, definitely. Sunderland
this weekend, one you're looking forward to?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, it's a big game, a big club, new manager. So obviously their players are going to be right up for it, trying to impress their new manager. And try and get their shirts. So it's going to be a tough game, but I'm sure it'll be an enjoyable one.
A great, I suppose, sign to show the other teams that Lincoln really mean business.
Yeah, I think as the weeks have gone on, obviously we've proved to most of the league that we are a threat, and we're doing really well, and we've just got to concentrate on ourselves and probably not worry about the table too much. Make sure we do what we've been doing in the building and on the pitch, and carry on that going forward.
Yeah, Gary, let's have a chat about George Grant then. Have you been impressed with just how quickly he has improved? I mean, because it has been quite a rapid rate. We know how good he was last season, but he's clearly one of League One's standout players this season.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's how quickly he's developed into the player that he's threatened to be at Notts County. We saw him at Notts County against Lincoln. He was superb, always known his ability. But then when he in spells with Mansfield and Luton, there might have been a question from some of their fans over his application, which proved to be unfounded. I think what's really surprised me is how quickly he has adapted to Michael and to kind of Michael's approach, because he did struggle when Michael first came in. I think he was injured the first couple of games. He came off against Wimbledon at half time with a bit of a flea in his ear, from what I understand. And in actual fact, he's taken that on board. That's the sign of a really good professional. He knew what he needed to do. He listened to the manager who knew what needed to happen, and then he's gone on and he's done that. And let's be honest, with Liam Bridcut kind of being injured, George has probably been the first name on the team sheet.
Yeah, and with Liam Bridcut being injured as well, obviously George has had to be captain on a number of occasions, the club vice captain, but we've seen him take the armband quite a few times this season. Do you think that's helped him as well?
Yeah, I think you've seen that in the responsibility and the maturity within his game. Yeah, and he did play centrally a little bit towards the end of last season, and he obviously scored the game against Peterborough, and he began to affect proceedings from there. But even then, people were talking, will he be with us next season? Is he one of the players that will survive? And in actual fact, he's shown a tremendous amount of application. And when you consider that I think there's only probably 2 or 3 players left over from last season, that demonstrates exactly how highly he is rated at Sincil Bank. And that has come partly, I think, from the responsibility, because when he came here, he's a young flair player, and what he's actually developed into is a solid, experienced professional footballer. He's been around the game a lot now as well, and I think his finer qualities are coming out with age.
We've obviously seen him start on the left side of a front three so far this season, and of course in centre mid as well. Where do you expect to see him play this afternoon? Or do you maybe expect to see him dip between the two?
I think if Liam Bridcut is still out, which I'm not sure, I haven't seen a press conference, I would expect George Grant to play in the midfield. I think sometimes when you put him out on the left, you kind of miss the creativity. And I also think that with Sunderland, with the way Sunderland set up and the players they've got, actually explosive pace on the flanks will be a big advantage to us today. And what George gives us is a little bit more guile rather than pace. I'm not saying he's not quick. I'm saying we've got quicker players. So I expect him to play somewhere in the middle where he can pull the strings. Again, Sunderland do lack that pace in the middle of the park. Josh Scowen and Grant Ledbetter, both good players, but not quick players. So I think that they'll probably match George Grant up like for like with one of those.
Yeah, Gary, we're going to be talking about Sunderland much more in the second part of the show. Barely mentioned them so far, but on that, you mentioned there the fact that they're more experienced, but of course older heads means perhaps less pace in the side. What are you expecting from their midfield this afternoon? Hard
work, without a doubt. I might say that the likes of Scowen and Ledbetter don't have pace, but my goodness, they're good footballers. Grant Ledbetter has been a model professional throughout his career. Max Power's a player that I'm really interested to see a little bit more of as well. I think with the Lee Johnson side, they'll look to play decent football. And there's a lot of players trying to impress as well. So I think you're going to see a high level of application from perhaps the younger players. I know Denver Hume, unfortunately, is injured. He's somebody that I've liked the look of. Jack Diamond is another who, was at Harrogate last season out on loan. I think he's knocking on the first team door. Will Grigg, Charlie White, 1 million and 4 million apiece. They might be below us in the division, but, make no mistake at all about this. This is a really, really strong side that we're facing today who are in transition.
Okay, good stuff, Gary. Now, today, the club are showing their support for the Rainbow Laces campaign. Rainbow corner flags and substitution boards will be used today. It's to highlight our continued support for LGBT fans, players and staff across the game. Discrimination is not okay today, nor any day. Do take a look at this.
Football should bring us all together.
It's part of our national fabric.
And at the heart of our communities.
We escape from reality.
We connect with others.
And we celebrate and commiserate as one.
But for some, supporting their team isn't that easy.
They don't feel welcomed or included. We must all do more to make a change.
Players, fans, managers and staff.
We must stand together.
As allies for all.
Lesbian, gay, bi, trans or straight.
People of all orientation
and gender identities are part of the game.
Football is what brings us all together.
We must continue to support one another.
Wear rainbow laces with pride
and share our experiences and stories.
Because everyone is welcome here.
We're all part of what makes our game special.
So everyone must feel safe and included.
And we will improve.
We will change to ensure this happens.
In stadiums,
online,
and in our communities.
So let's join together and celebrate our diversity.
Let's unite and raise awareness.
Because discrimination in any form will not
and cannot be accepted
by any of us.
Not today.
Or any day.
Yeah, absolutely. Really powerful video that. And Gary, I mean, are we finally making headway with this? Because it's been a long old time, hasn't it? But the Rainbow Laces campaign is something that's been going for a while now, and it's doing really good things, isn't it? All the players backing it, all the clubs backing it, and not just backing it because they have to, backing it because they feel it's right.
Yeah, I think so. I think football's making great big strides, and there's always still more work to be done. Any campaign that raises awareness of diversity issues and discrimination issues within the game is welcome by me. I've worked on occasion with Maria from the SFA on Fans for Diversity and that sort of thing. We've done hugely important because football's a global game. You know, football doesn't discriminate. If you love it, you love it. It doesn't matter who you are. So everybody should feel included in the wonderful experiences that it can offer.
Absolutely. Let's get to some of your comments then. Clive says, hopefully a win today. We are playing some fantastic football this season. Such a pleasure to watch. Up the Imps. Chris says, afternoon, gents. Would be more than happy with a point today, but I'm actually pretty nervous for this game. Well, it's a big one, Chris, and I can see us losing. Okay, Chris. Well, that's fair enough. You're allowed to have your opinion. That's what football's about. It's about opinions, isn't it? Let's hope you're wrong. And let's go to one more comment. Owen says, let's hope we beat Sunderland, make Lee Johnson's first game an 11-point gap loss to the mighty Imps, make it a bad day for him. Well, I certainly hope that Lincoln City can make it an 11-point gap between the Imps and Sunderland. No doubt about that. Great to have you with us this afternoon. Owen, let's go to a very quick ad break. We're back in around about 20 seconds time. It's 2:00. Here's Alan Long with today's Lincoln City team news.
Hi Sam, yeah, welcome pitchside here. It's a little bit of a gloomy day, but I've got the starting lineup for the Imps here. So in goal is number 1, Alex Palmer. At 4, Lewis Monsma. At 7 is Teo Eden. At 8, James Jones. 9, Tom Hopper. At 10, George Grant. 16 is Joe Walsh. Number 20 is Brennan Johnson. TJ Aoma comes in at number 22. 24 is Robbie Gotts. And at 26 is Harry Anderson. On the bench for the Imps today, we've got 31, Sam Long. Number 3, Max Melbourne. Number 11, Anthony Scully. Number 17, Remy Howarth. Number 25, Zach Oberzetti. And number 30, Sean Rowan. Today's referee is Charles Breakspear. The assistants, Wayne Grunill and Stephen Brown. And the fourth official is Declan Bourne. So I make that 7 changes, so I'll just run through the starting lineup once again. So we've got Alex Palmer, Lewis Monsma, Teo Eden, James Jones, Tom Hopper, George Grant, Joe Walsh, Brennan Johnson, TJ Aoma, Robbie Gotts and Harry Anderson. Okay, that's from me. Back to you in the studio.
Yeah, there's Alan Long with today's Lincoln City starting lineup. We'll give you the Sunderland starting 11 later on in the show as well. Gary, I'll put the question to you then. Michael Appleton making a number of changes, of course, to be expected after 2 games this week. What do you make of that starting 11?
More or less, I think the strongest starting 11 that we could have gone with, bar the injuries. Obviously, Conor McGran does limped off in midweek. He doesn't play. Robbie Gotts drops into the midfield. Really excited to see that. I think Gotts has been getting better and better. I know Mark Hone was incredibly excited on the radio. So, you know, I don't think it's particularly weakened the side at all. We've got lots of pace out on the flanks as expected with Johnson and Anderson. It's a strong Lincoln City team. It's as strong as we could expect.
Yeah, we've talked about TJ Omer. He'll be the right back this afternoon, but Teo Edden's back at left back and Max Melbourne drops to the bench.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a big vocal supporter of Teo. I thought he was really good against Rochdale. Once or twice he got caught probably defensively in the first half, but we weren't punished. But certainly going forward, he was very good. I think when you look at some of the chances, lots of them start with him. He's got a really good range of passing. He's got a great engine on him. For me, at the moment, I think he's actually forced his way into the first choice left back role, and Max has now got a job on his hands to displace him, which competition for places is what you want in a squad.
Yeah, absolutely. And going further up the field then, Gary, I mean, we're going to be speaking to Michael Appleton very shortly. Lots of reaction comments coming in about the excitement of the fact that Robbie Gotts is playing in midfield. I mean, what do you expect to see from him? Because he's a very different player to the likes of Conor McGrandles and Liam Bridcut, isn't he?
Yeah, he is really forward thinking. I think we saw that with him pressing forward against Shrewsbury. I think it was. He wants to get in the box. He wants to get into shooting positions. He's really positive. He's really direct. He's got, again, I keep saying it, he's technically very good. He's got a good range of passing. Again, he's going to look to get balls out wide. He's going to look to run in the channels. I fancy Robbie Gotts to get on the score sheet at some point soon, certainly when he's playing in an attacking midfield role. I think he's getting better and better.
Promise you the Sunderland starting 11. I've got it here for you, so I'll give it to you now. It's Lee Burge in goal, Conor McLaughlin, Tom Flanagan, Bailey Wright, Max Power, the brilliantly named Max Power is captain this afternoon for the Black Cats. Charlie White plays, Josh Scowen that Gary mentioned before, Jack Diamond, Grant Ledbetter that Gary also mentioned, Callum McFadzean, and Aidan McGeady. Aidan McGeady, Gary, one of the best players really in League One, isn't he? He's getting on a bit now, 35, 36, but he's got an abundance of quality, hasn't he?
Yeah, technically a very, very strong Sunderland team. I mean, McGeady he's played right at the top, hasn't he? He's played for Celtic, he's played for Everton. And I think, again, he's got the moments of magic that you don't expect at this level from every single player, every single team. Interesting that Charlie White plays, I think I heard there, instead of Will Grigg. White is for me a traditional League One centre forward. That's no disrespect. He's a player that's willing to put in a shift and graft and get a goal as well. Really, really experienced looking Sunderland side, but they've got a good squad. And as I've said, I mentioned Max Power, again, a player who I think we need to be very, very wary of.
Right, we promised you an interview with the manager live just after 2 o'clock. That's exactly what we can do now. Delighted to say that Michael Appleton joins us. Michael, great to see you. How are you? Can't quite hear Michael there. Let's hope we can get him off mute. It's the word of 2020, isn't it? You're on mute. Are you there, Michael?
I'm here now. I'm here.
There he is. Good to see you, Michael.
Sorry about that, Sam.
It's all right. It's all right. Say, if you can, then give us an idea about the starting 11 this afternoon. We're just talking about it there, myself and Gary. I'll make it 6 changes that you made, perhaps even 7 there from Tuesday night. The team are giving you a lot of good headaches, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they certainly are. But I think, obviously, I'm not forgetting the performance that the players put in last week at Rochdale. It was superb, in possession, out of possession. So in terms of obviously the starting lineup from last week, I think there's only really one change with Robbie coming in the middle of the park for Conor. But you're right, I can only ask the players who have had limited opportunities this year when they come in to do their bit and ask questions of me, and they did that on Tuesday.
Comments are flooding in, Michael, regarding the excitement of Robbie Gotts playing in midfield. What will he offer in midfield that he maybe doesn't at right back? Because obviously 2 completely different positions, but we know just how varied this man's game is.
Yeah, I mean, well, he certainly gives you lots of energy. I think everyone will realise that. He's the type of player that when he plays in the middle of the park, he tends to cover more ground than anybody else. I think on average he gets close to 13k a game when he's playing in midfield, so it gives you a bit of an understanding of what his game's about when he does play in there. But he's very tenacious. He can very, very quickly turn defence into attack, and that's something we're hoping to get from him today.
I think Gary Hutchinson's got a question for you, Michael.
Hi, Michael. I was chatting to James Jones in the week. He was telling me that he's been staying out kind of after training, putting in extra sessions with shooting. Is that something you've seen across the squad as we look to kind of become more clinical in front of goal?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, there's a few players who tend to want to stay out and do a little bit extra, and sometimes it can be difficult to get them off the grass, and you don't want them to overdo it, especially with the amount of games that we've got. But I think James has found himself in numerous positions this season and been very unfortunate, whether it's down to a little bit of good defending from blocks or the goalkeeper making good saves. I think last Saturday was just a bit of reward for continually getting in good position from midfield areas. But in terms of the rest of them, obviously there's a lot of banter that goes on with the goalkeepers and some of the midfield players and strikers, and they have a lot of competition most days after training.
Michael, one of the questions, one of the topics on this afternoon's Matchday Live is it ever too early, I should say, to start talking about promotion? From your point of view, how difficult is it to stay grounded, or how easy is it to stay grounded? Because second in the league at the moment, you could go top today as well. It's exciting times.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult sort of to try and ignore that, there's no doubt about it. But I think as a group, and we're certainly not going to divulge what they are, but we have got targets as a group, as a team. At this moment in time, we're continually being able to hit those targets, and I hope that lasts, because if it does, we've done our homework over the last 10, 12 years. If we hit our targets and continue to do that, then we don't need to look at the table, because history tells us we'll finish where we expect to finish, or where we would want to finish. So at this moment in time, the lads have been really, really focused about taking it game by game, and we work on a few games at a time, and as long as we get the points that we want, then come the end of the season, we won't be a million miles away from where we think we're more than capable of being.
Sunderland, of course, have got a new manager in Lee Johnson. What are you expecting from them today? Of course, one of the most experienced sides in the division, aren't they?
Yeah, very experienced. You've only got to look at the players on the bench to realise that they're a good outfit. Obviously, Lee's an experienced manager now. Worked for 4 or 5 years in the Championship, and he's got experience in League One prior to that with Oldham and Barnsley. So there'll be players in the team and the squad still, wanting to impress the manager, the new manager coming in, and almost stake a claim to stay at the club, because obviously the transfer window is just around the corner. There's certainly a football club that's big enough to go out and alter the squad if they feel they need to. So it's going to be a tough ask, tough game today, but I'll be very, very surprised if Lee isn't saying the same thing in the Sunderland dressing room.
Michael, we know you're a busy man, so we'll let you get off very shortly. Just finally, we know it was your birthday last week and you had some Krispy Kremes. Did you enjoy them?
Yeah, they were delightful, yeah. I'm a bit of a I've got a soft spot for donuts, to be fair, because they've got a right sweet tooth, so they went down well.
Good stuff indeed. Well, Michael, we'll let you get off and continue your pre-match preparations. Really appreciate your time on today's Matchday Live.
Cheers.
Michael.
That's the manager, Michael Appleton. Great to hear his thoughts so soon after releasing his team news as well. So really appreciate Michael for coming on the show there. And Gary, in terms of today's starting lineup, then we'll bring the starting 11 graphic back in for those of you that are just joining us. Just caught up with Michael Appleton there regarding today's starting 11. 6 changes that he's made: Alex Palmer, TJ Omer, Lewis Montsma, Joe Walsh, Teo Eden, George Grant's the captain. Robbie Gotts comes into the central midfield spots. James Jones joins him. It is then Brennan Johnson, Harry Anderson and Tom Hopper. Long, Melbourne, Scully, Howarth, Zach Elbazedi and Sean Rowan on the bench. And Gary, let's just talk about that front three then, because it's one that we're very used to seeing so far this season. What will Sunderland be expecting from the likes of Brennan Johnson, Harry Anderson and Tom Hopper?
Pace, almost certainly from the wide areas. We've shown that we're more than comfortable cutting inside, cutting outside. The wingers will be able to swap as well. So they're going to certainly pose questions of the wide defenders for Sunderland. They're also going to expect a lot of hard work from Tom Hopper. Tom puts himself about. He covers so much ground during the game. The central defenders are going to have to know when to kind of pick him up, when to let him go. So it's going to be a tough afternoon for them. And again, we keep talking about pace, and we keep looking at the Sunderland side and talking about experience, and that really is the kind of the key questions today. The two coming up against each other. So, but they know that Lincoln City are going to always put in a shift. There's not been a single game this season where we've come away thinking the lads have more in the tank.
All set for a brilliant game, isn't it? Of course, if the Imps beat Sunderland this afternoon, they will go 11 points clear of today's opponents. Here's a reminder of what happened when the two sides last met at the LNER Stadium this time last season. Yeah, another good tune there. This one by the Flatland Kings, When We Were Young. Gary, one thing I really enjoyed about that game, not just the fact that, of course, it was a brilliant performance for the Imps and the fact that they got the 3 points, was the fact that reading the comments from the Sunderland fans after it, bearing in mind that their fans have travelled all over the country to Premier League sides, to Championship sides, and now to League One sides as well. A lot of them were saying, actually, in terms of home support, it was one of the best they'd ever seen. I mean, it's quite a compliment, but not a surprise when you hear the noise there.
No, absolutely, and that was the first thing that actually struck me when I was watching those highlights as well, was the crowd and the noise. And sometimes when you're a part of that, it's hard to then know how effective it is from the opposition's point of view, because it can be loud all the time. And I think it's a real compliment. I think if you ask probably 90% of unbiased away fans, they would say that the atmosphere at Sincil Bank is amongst the best in League One, because we've got that perfect combination of the right numbers but without the pressure. Because often the bigger clubs who are attracting 14, 15, 20,000 have got the additional pressure of having to get out of the division, the Ipswiches, the Sunderlands, the Portsmouths. We didn't have that last year, and we wouldn't have it this year, and I think that probably contributes to the atmosphere.
Yeah, so Sunderland, Premier League side, just 3 years ago, would you believe? One of the men that helped them get there is ex-defensive forward, as he calls himself, Chris Brown. I caught up with him yesterday. This is what he had to say about his ex-side.
It was obviously playing for my hometown club. We got promoted to the Premier League in my first season in the team. So I thought, this is it. This is the life of a footballer. It's winning the league for my hometown club. I thought, God, this is excellent. Obviously, as time goes on, you move on and stuff. You realise that that was the pinnacle at such a young age. But to play for the team that I supported as a boy, and to get them into the Premier League, help get them in the Premier League. I think I played 35 games in that first season. I look back. It's only really when I look back now that I think how proud I am that I was able and given the chance to do that.
You're obviously a Sunderland fan, like you mentioned before. How difficult has it been to see the club and the shape that the club have been over the past sort of 10, 12, even 15 years? Give us an insight to that from your perspective.
It's just been so tough. I mean, I remember when they were in the bottom of the Premier League and the fans were still disappointed, still getting on the players' backs and just wanting more. There's that much expectation up there. And I don't know where that comes from. Obviously, when Peter Reid was in charge, that was the glory years for me personally, growing up at a young age, watching Sunderland compete at the top of the Premier League. But since then, there's still an expectation, because it's a big club, that we should be up there. So then to see them get the double relegation, you just can't comprehend it.
What about Lincoln then? I mean, it's quite difficult Googling Chris Brown, Lincoln City, because Grant Brown is Lincoln City's record appearance holder. So that just takes a precedence on Google for about the first 5 pages. So, I mean, have you played at the LNER Stadium before?
I definitely haven't played there. I was trying to think this morning whether I played against Lincoln when I was at Doncaster the first time. But I can't remember. I know I was injured for most of the season, but I can't remember if we played them at Bellevue. I definitely haven't played at Lincoln, but I'll have to do some more digging if I can get past the stats.
Yeah, get past those first 10 pages on Google. What about the game on Saturday then? How do you see it going? Of course, Sunderland got a new manager in Lee Johnson.
It's one of them where you're looking for a new manager bounce, which hasn't happened yet. I don't know how much input into the coaching and stuff he had before the last couple of games, but you're looking for a response from Sunderland. You're looking for players to run that extra, get that extra 5 or 10% out of the performances, because there's a new manager. I think it does. I don't know if it's a placebo or what, but you see a lot of times that when a new manager comes in, they go on a bit of a run, and Sunderland fans will be looking for that. And Lee Johnson's a very good manager. He's proved that. Me personally, I wanted the Cowley brothers, obviously, who you'll know a lot about. But Lee Johnson's it'll be a good appointment.
Yeah, were you perhaps a little bit surprised that the Cowley brothers didn't get the job in the end, because they obviously said that they wanted it?
Yeah, and I don't know. Obviously, there's going to be finances involved where they might have had a certain expectation of what they wanted, but that would, for me, that would have been perfect for them as well. You know, they went to Huddersfield, which, I mean, Sunderland's a bigger club than Huddersfield, in my opinion. I know they're in the league below, but the potential at Sunderland is unbelievable. And I wouldn't have thought wages would have been that much of a problem because they'll have getting quite a good pay up from Huddersfield, you'd have thought. So yeah, it was a strange one.
You mentioned that new manager bounce. What was it like when you played under a new manager? I mean, you scored Roy Keane. You scored the first goal of the Roy Keane era. So it's obviously something that you benefited from. As a former professional footballer, do you notice that when the new manager comes in? Does everything feel lifted?
Yeah, but you can't put your finger on why. The only thing you can think of is that players want to impress, but that shouldn't be the mentality because you should have been impressing before. So that gives players a bad name. And you see it all the time where these players who were played the week before were hopeless. And you look at the stats the week after and they've ran further, they've made more tackles, and you think, how can you justify that?
Well, hopefully Lincoln aren't playing Sunderland at the wrong time then. Chris, just finally, really appreciate your time. I've got a few quick fire questions for you, if you don't mind. Only 5 of them. So I'll put them to you and see who comes to mind first. First one is best player that you've played with.
Tom Kearney.
Worst trainer.
John Parkin.
Craziest teammate.
Gabriel Tamas.
Best manager.
Mick McCarthy.
And finally, the big one. What's the score going to be on Saturday afternoon?
2-1 Sunderland. Sorry, Lincoln fans.
Yeah, let's hope he's wrong. And you may have recognised Chris's voice there from the brilliant podcast that he started with John Parkin that he mentioned there as well. Under the Cosh, it's available in all the usual places. There's chats with Matt Reed, Gary Taylor-Fletcher, Jimmy Walker, just some of the names that you can listen to now, as I said, in all the usual places. Let's go to a very quick ad break. We're back in around about 20 seconds. See you shortly. Now, talking of podcasts, you may have heard a brilliant one this week with our chairman, Clive Nates. He caught up with Graham Falk. Graham runs the Falk podcast, and Graham will bring you in now. We'll bring Gary in for a chat as well. Graham, it was a great chat. Listen to the podcast. Really enjoyed it. What did you make of our chairman, Clive?
Yeah, a really nice guy. What probably people don't see as well is that it looks like he's given up sort of 45 minutes of his time to chat to someone who's not a supporter of his club. He also spoke to me for a good sort of half an hour, 35 minutes afterwards as well. I was really impressed. I mean, I went to Lincoln last year, and as much as it was a really grim day to be a Sunderland fan, the whole day in terms of like the stadium, the atmosphere around it, I think I spoke about it on the podcast. I really enjoyed how there was a really loud atmosphere in that particular corner, which you don't always see at League One level, to be honest. But it still had like a really nice community aspect around it. But yeah, to answer your question, Clive was great to catch up with and really, really welcoming towards basically an opposition fan.
You asked him a really good question. You said, if you look back at the last 3 or 4 years, what do you put that success down to? And his answer was really succinct. It was straight to the point, as we expect with Clive, but it was brilliant. He said, picking good managers. And of course, he and the rest of the board picked Danny Cowley with Nicky Cowley. They've then gone and picked Michael Appleton, enjoying success. Again, I guess if we compare that with Sunderland, like we have to, obviously Jack Ross lost his job straight after the defeat in January 2019 against the Imps. You've obviously had 2 managers since then, so 3 in the last year or so. It's a completely different story, isn't it? And managers just such an important part of the success.
It's absolutely massive. I think Clive made a really, really good point about appointing a manager that I asked him about like picking a manager that the fans want. Do you go with the favourite? And he said to me, you have to keep that in mind, but also have your own thoughts on what it should be, because the fans can't know as much as the board and the person choosing the manager would know. However, when you're looking at Sunderland, Jack Ross lost his job, and correctly so. I was very much in support of that. but the Phil Parkinson appointment was, how do I say this in the best possible way? Universally across Sunderland's entire fan base, not one single person wanted him. I think as a manager, he was just not the right fit for Sunderland, and it felt like Sunderland, due to that appointment, has been in like a pause mode for the best part of a year. So I think that kind of shows you how important it is that Sunderland have effectively wasted a year and could be spending another year if the form continues the same way in League One, which is not what anyone envisaged about 3 years ago. But hopefully Lee Johnson is the right man, but time will tell.
Gary, I'll ask you about Lee Johnson because we've not spoken about him so far. What have you made of the appointment in terms of Johnson? And do you expect the managerial bounce that we keep talking about, that new manager bounce this afternoon?
I think Lee Johnson's a strong appointment. As a neutral, obviously, I like Chris Brown said, I was behind Danny and Nicky getting it, but I think Lee Johnson is a good progressive appointment. He's been in League One before with Oldham and Bristol City. He did with Oldham and Barnsley, I beg your pardon. He did very, very well with Bristol City. He's an appointment for the future. He's an appointment with a vision, I think, rather than getting somebody like Phil Parkinson, who is kind of just a shut up shop, let's not get the up and out and kind of manager. Lee Johnson is somebody that will probably affect change throughout the club from the bottom upwards. In terms of new manager bounce, I think it's questionable. I think it's like the manager of the month curse. You can always find a situation that fits. So this manager went in and this changed. Obviously there was the defeat against Wickham last week. I know Lee was obviously only just in the dugout then and a win against Oldham. It's a tough game for a new manager to come into. I actually think because of the players that Sunderland have got, it's not so much a new manager bounce as just getting back really to where they should be. And if they start picking up a few more points, it will be attributed to Johnson. But there's some very, very good players there as well.
Yeah, experienced players, big name players as well. And Graham, what do you make of your side's starting lineup this afternoon? Who should we be keeping an eye on?
I'm really happy with it, to be honest with you. Under Parkinson, we were playing that sort of 3 at the back, or is it 5 at the back? And it would depend week on week whether it would be like a 3 at the back with almost your centre backs playing like wing backs, or 5 at the back, and it just didn't really suit us. And thankfully, Lee Johnson, the minute he's walked in the door, has put 4 at the back. I hear an awful lot that Sunderland have really good players. I can attest that we don't over the past 2 years the way that we've been, but we have players that can do better than what they're doing, I think, is kind of what I would say. But in terms of players to watch out for, I mean, it's a lot of expectation on his shoulders, but Aidan McGeady is far and wide, on his day, the best player in this league. Just so naturally gifted. Aidan McGeady of 30-year-old, if he wasn't 34, 35, wouldn't be in this division. And I think he's here by default by the fact that we just had a bad season in the Championship and got relegated. He came to us when we got relegated from the Premiership, but he hasn't played in a year. And he's only played a game and a half, I think. But if he's on form, he can win you the game. But who I would say you would watch is maybe a name that many people haven't heard of, which is Jack Diamond. He was on loan at Harrogate last year. Parkinson didn't really give him the chance. We were all quite excited to see him play because he had a great season last year at Harrogate. I think he was their Young Player of the Year or something like that. He's very naive and he's very raw, like a lot of young players are, 19, 20. But one thing Sunderland miss is pace. Lyndon Gooch is pretty much the only player that can sort of shift, shall we say. And he's injured, I think, for another couple of weeks. And Jack Diamond came on last week as a sub in the last sort of 10, 15 minutes, I think. And he breathed a little bit of a spark into us, but he was man of the match in the game against Oldham during the week. And Lincoln's a very different side to Oldham, but every time I've seen Jack Diamond, he's looked good, and he's sometimes been shoehorned when he has got 5 to 10 minutes here or there against under Parkinson, against sort of other teams. He's been shoehorned into a right wing back role, which is not his role. He's an out and out winger. So with Lee Johnson coming in and us playing that sort of 4 at the back, the 3 up front was kind of the 2 sort of wing forwards. He should be on the right today with McGeady on the left. And I think it's everything that Lee Johnson's given him a chance ahead of, an experienced player who's been a match winner for us plenty of times in Chris Maguire. But I think the majority of Sunderland fans, if they all listen to this, will agree that Jack Diamond's probably the person to watch today.
There you go, Jack Diamond, the man to keep an eye out on. Graham, we're flying through the show. We're absolutely delighted to have you on it as well. And we're running out of time. So I will just ask you in one word, what do you think the score is going to be this afternoon?
1-1.
There you go. 1-1, Graham. Really appreciate your time. And you can check that interview. Where can you listen to the interview with Clive? It's well worth a listen.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you just search What the Folk on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and it's also on Podbean. I think it's on a couple of other places as well, but they're the 4 that I would promote.
Yeah, there you go. FALK. For
Definitely.
those of you at home. Thanks very much for your time. That's the thoughts of Graham Falk there. Gary, let's just finish with having a look at the Imps starting 11 once more. Then we'll get that starting graphic up for you. If you're only just joining us, Michael Appleton making 6 changes from Tuesday night. Who haven't we discussed, Gary, that you might just want to flag up before we get off?
Let's point a finger at Harry Anderson, who's been having a phenomenal season. Last couple of games, we've been scoring goals, we've been creating chances, and Harry has been kind of he's been a part of it. I'm not hesitate to say on the periphery because he always turns in a good performance. But I think Harry's the sort of player, certainly in a 4-3-3 that Sunderland play, we can get at their fullbacks because he's very different to any other winger in this league in that he's got the power as well as the pace. So he could be a game winner for us this afternoon.
Just looking ahead then, Gary, what do you make of the Imps' upcoming fixtures? We've got the league table I think we can bring in as well because it makes for great viewing, so any excuse to have a quick look at it. There's the fixtures. We'll come to the league table very shortly as well. Shrewsbury Town up next on Tuesday. Another game at the LNER, another big one.
Yeah, it is. Look, after today, Shrewsbury, Northampton and Burton, being brutally honest, are probably 3 games that you would expect us to take 7 to 9 points from. Wonderful kind of level of expectation to roll out and put no pressure on. So we've actually got a really good run. And when you look at some of the teams in and around us, the Portsmouths and the Ipswiches, they've got tough games coming up. We could go into that Hull City game with the 2 of us being some points clear of the chasing pack. So, yeah, I look at those 4 games and I think if we were to take 8 points from 4 games, 2 points per game, we'll maintain the promotion push, whether that's what it is or whether that's what we're not labelling it as.
I think we've got the league table. Let's see if we can have a very quick look at it. There we go. Makes for great viewing. Any excuse to chuck it in. We've been so jam-packed on this afternoon show, we've not even had a chance to look at it. But Gary, I mean, there is a chance this afternoon that should Hull City lose, although they are at home, should they lose and the Imps win, they will finish today top of League One. It's pinch yourself stuff, isn't it?
It is. I tend to actually look down a little bit when we're in the automatic promotion spots. Yeah, sure, title would be great. But you look down there, 4-point gap between us and third and the game in hand as well. That's what really excites me because if we can maintain the form that I've just mentioned, if we could look for 8 points over the next 4 games, that gap could feasibly increase a little. And, the thing is, we can talk about us being underdogs, but if you've got a gap, teams have got to come and catch you. And that's not as easy as it looks.
There you go, Gary. We've run out of time. Much appreciated as ever. Myself and Gary Hutchinson back on Tuesday night when the Imps host Shrewsbury at the LNER Stadium. We'll be with you from 5:45. We'll let you get off and enjoy the game and set up for a big afternoon for the Imps. Can they finish today top of the League One table? They face Sunderland. If you go on to www.weareimps.com/ifollow now, you can buy your match pass, all the build-up with Dale Story this afternoon, as well as BBC Radio Lincolnshire's Michael Horton, I believe. Do enjoy the game. Fingers crossed for another 3 points for Lincoln City. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.